Will there be others joining us?
We hope so. We need one more for a quorum.
So Justin,
Oh, we're good.
Right.
there's gonna be some park money coming down the pipe.
Okay.
I
Great.
don't know when it's gonna hit. And with midterm elections might mess with it. But,
Sure.
lots of focus on parks
That'd be great.
and connectivity through parks and parks becoming, so I'm gonna keep my eyes open and,
Yeah, let
They
me
do.
know.
yeah.
I actually talked to one of the consulting firms that wants to put together a response to that
Mhm.
land use plan update, because he knows we've been thinking about doing a park plan, and he was like, what if we kind of did some joint,
It's a
public
good way to
input?
get in, yeah.
That'd be great. Go ahead and get started on it too, so.
So I work with, tool design and alta planning a good bit.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I don't know if they target like smaller areas like this, but,
Yeah. Alta did part of our downtown master.
okay.
plan. Yeah, they did some of the
yeah,
streetscape work, I think.
okay, yeah, cool.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, it's 5:30, October 18th. I'd like to call to order the Town of Bowling Springs Planning Board meeting. And at this time, I'll turn it over to for public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to provide any comment to the board. And hearing none, I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to review and approve or deny the minutes from the last meeting, September 20th. Everyone had a chance to review those?
Make a motion to be approved.
Second.
We have a motion from David and a second from Thomas. All in favor?
We
Aye.
have to hit the vote thing, right?
You'll have to do the thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We should know this by now.
By the time we learn it, there'll be something different.
Okay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is consideration to an amendment affecting Chapter 92 of the Code Ordinances, and I can turn that over to staff and to give us a review.
Thank you, sir. So this basically is it's had a few names in the past, but the livestock ordinance or the animal ordinance. We really started to dive into what our existing code had, which was Chapter 92, and realized that Chapter 92 adopted the Cleveland County animal. Let's see, it's not called animal control anymore, it's animal services, but they have a chapter on animals. So it had previously adopted their animal control ordinance, but within the last year or so, they have completely changed that ordinance. And so 92 had references to the old ordinance, a lot of the same text as the old ordinance. So we were looking at that, of course, to kind of substitute or put in some additional regulations like we've discussed in the last few meetings. So in looking at that, we basically decided to just scrap 92 as it is. If you look at the last few pages, there's I'll call it a red line, but it's blue lines in there, that shows all the stuff we struck out, and really that was a copy of the old Cleveland County ordinance. We now have a reference in the first section of this chapter adopting the Cleveland County ordinance that regulates animals, so it's more it's sort of broad. It's not that specific old ordinance. It's whatever kind of the county has on animals we will adopt, and we contract with the Animal Services Department for those services. So we wanted to put that in there to go ahead and just clean up Chapter 92. And then in addition to that, from the feedback we've got from you all and from Town Council about the regulation of animals and trying to make it more restrictive, we added in some additional standards that allows us to enforce some other regulations that are outlined in Section 9204 sort of on an as-needed basis. So if it's something that animal control can handle, we don't want to get into the animal control business. We want to let them handle it. That's what we pay them to do. But if there's a situation where we need to do something maybe a little more quickly, or kind of start the process before we hand it over to animal control, then we've outlined some sort of general regulations. I say general, but they're fairly specific as far as keeping of animals and maintaining the premises where they're kept, and maintaining a sanitary environment, feeding wild animals, that kind of thing. So Section 9204A 1 through 6 are those regulations. And then those can be enforced by 9204 Section B, and that enforcement section actually mirrors the counties pretty closely in terms of those first few bullet points. The county has an escalating fine in place that on the third or fourth offense, I believe it is, actually speaks to removal of the animal. That's not something that we would be able to do. So I've mirrored the violations or the penalties, but then I've sort of taken that out. So we can continue to fine, and then we can put in place requirements for restraining animals. But at some point, we would have to turn it over to animal control if it's a case where the animals need to actually be collected and taken away. Does that make sense, the way I've kind of described it? I know it was kind of a bigger change than we talked about previously, but when we really dug into that chapter, we realized we needed to revamp that, but then we still wanted to put those sort of more specific and harsher penalties and standards in there.
I have a couple of questions. I believe it says that the town manager or his designee can enforce this. Who would you call after hours? Let's say, I don't know, your neighbor had a couple of goats and they decided to spend the evening on your porch. You go next door to your neighbor and say, hey, your goats are on your porch, and they send over a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old to gather the goats who are unable to. Would you, I mean, you wouldn't call animal control at that point. It's not really a 911 emergency.
Yeah.
How would you handle that?
One of the police officers on duty would be contacted to go over there and make contact, and there'd have to be some sort of either they'd show up and the animal's on the property, or the property owner would have a picture of the animal to be able to relay that. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's locally enforced then, okay.
yes, sir. Yeah, it'd be.
My second one is, I know in our current ordinance, when we're looking to replace, it does mention about not having animals for commercial purposes. Is that something, I apologize, I wasn't here for the town council meeting, but is that something that we could discuss or add?
Sure. Yeah, that's something that we could add if you wanted that specific language put in there. I think it's not specifically mentioned. I think it would fairly well be covered under a sanitary environment and some other of the regulations in there. But yeah, we can certainly put that specific language in there.
All of these requirements and still sell, do commercial things with your animals, eggs or.
Wouldn't that fall back to zoning? If they're in a residential
Yeah, it really.
section, they're not supposed to sell or do commercial activity, correct?
That's correct. It could potentially fall under a home-based business if there was just like they're selling eggs off the porch or something like that. I'm not sure what the rules are for home-based businesses, but I mean, we could just put, animals can't be sold for commercial purposes in there, and that would be all right if we doubled up, basically.
I mean, I'm not looking, if people are raising, are breeding cats or dogs and they're selling them, I'm not looking to stop that necessarily. But, when you come to some livestock things, maybe, it's just a thought. I mean, this is much better than what we had.
I haven't read the interlocal agreement with the town and the county, but I think it'd be worthwhile taking a look at that too, to make sure that any changes wouldn't affect that agreement between those two organizations.
Yeah, it's got some age on it as well. It's pretty straightforward in terms of they'll enforce their ordinance here, but yeah, it does need to be updated. We're looking at that too.
So is there a public hearing set for this item?
No, sir.
Okay.
That would just be a.
I have a question on for number 6.
Mm-hmm.
Feeding and harboring wild, feral, or domesticated which threaten public health, safety, or the welfare of the community. Is that going to, we have a very high population of geese
Mm-hmm.
around our community. How is that going to, and we have a lot of people who like to feed geese and
Mhm.
ducks. Is that going to fall in this category?
I would say if we get a complaint that someone feels threatened by a flock of geeses, perhaps, or a flock of geese, then we would probably go out and issue a warning and say, somebody else was chased off of their property, but
They're wild geese, though, that's the problem,
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're protected.
Yeah.
They are protected.
so my thought is like there have been restaurants downtown that have fed the buzzards and it's attracted the buzzards. This would give us a little more teeth to be able to go to them and just say, stop feeding the buzzards. I mean, we obviously can't kill the buzzards and carry them off because they're protected, but
I was thinking more if we could join forces and get help from the federal government to
yeah,
relocate these
Communities geese.
community geese.
yes.
And of course, feeding wildcats is a whole nother
Yeah,
animal in itself, literally.
literally.
Okay.
I think if, back to Thomas's comment too about the topic of commercial, that can be a broad subject and tough on staff to determine when the line's been crossed. I mean, I wouldn't want to, if somebody's got some chickens and they're selling some eggs, I don't know that would, in reality, I don't know if staff would want to chase that rabbit.
Yeah.
Chase the rabbit.
That's a whole nother.
These are great animal analogies, yeah.
Just thought.
Yeah, and we can put together some thoughts and examples and potential scenarios for the town council to look at if that's something you all
Again,
want
if
us to look
someone's
at.
raising cats or dogs and are selling their puppies, I don't want to stop people from.
Commercial.
Exactly.
Yeah, what's that line? I
Yeah,
see
where's
what you're
that
saying.
line?
Mhm.
So maybe we go with this and we leave
Well,
out
you
the
would-
commercial.
You would hope that if they're engaged in that business activity, they're doing it in a sanitary
Yeah.
fashion. If not, they don't need to be selling them to begin with.
Yeah.
Let me just get some clarification too on 9201. I know a lot of the towns have adopted A, which just basically says we adopt a county ordinance and we want the county to enforce it.
Okay.
But here we're adding a B to that, which basically says in addition to the ordinance, the town manager or their designee may enforce these regulations in 04 without interfering with regulations set forth in the county ordinance. So I think, is the intent here with this B for the town to be able to be the first responder, so to speak?
It is.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And that should be A, B, and C. But yeah, the first B. It is. So if there's a problem that we can go out and address and quickly, and we're nearby, whereas animal control sometimes is not able to get here in a timely manner, or if it's after hours or something, we can go out and handle it, and could take it through a couple of those penalty levels before either continuing on and making it, a heavier fine and then containment of the animal, or passing it off to animal control and saying, okay, this is beyond, our scope of what we're able to handle, but we've kind of started the process.
And that may be something run by animal control too, to see if they could legally take a case that was started by another jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And not have to start the case all over.
Yeah.
So that was just a thought I had too there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm not sure if they could piggyback or if they'd have to start over. But yeah, we'll make sure that's clarified.
I'm sure you'll have an occasional case where there's an unfortunate situation, but maybe a dog needs to be taken to the shelter.
So question, if it's during hours and somebody has a problem, the county responds first, or do they call the town manager? Or the town manager, who has more control there? Who has the right to respond first, or more authority there?
That's a good question. In my mind, it's going to be case specific. So
Right.
if it's somebody that's got a suspected puppy mill, we'll call animal control and assist them. But if it's somebody that's, chickens wandered into some neighbor's yard and,
Say chicken's gone wild.
yeah, and they can't get there until, the next day or something, we can at least go out, issue a warning, and hopefully maybe just resolve the situation there instead of saying, well, you got to call animal control, and animal control, comes out the next day, and then the chicken's gone, and then it's that kind of thing. So
I just wonder if the average resident knows who to call. Would they just call this general building here and just automatically call animal control?
They may call 911.
Yeah.
we get plenty of calls here that we refer to animal control, or we tell residents to call. Sometimes us calling if it's an ongoing situation, and then the resident calling helps animal control to build up their complaints. And sometimes we just ask them to call animal control. So it just depends.
I think you guys have done a great job writing herd on this.
Thank you, sir.
So I think the meat of this is 9204, right? 1
Yes,
through
sir.
6.
Yes, sir.
And then the second part of that is the enforcement procedure,
Mm-hmm.
which follows that.
And like I said, 1 through 4 is all the same as the counties. It's just those 1 through 4 enforcement methods with the fines that are different.
So number 1 of 04, it looks like it would be addressing dangerous animals that could cause harm or injure someone.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 2, when I read that, I'm thinking barking dogs.
Yeah. Crow and roosters. Yeah.
Or crowing roosters.
Mm-hmm.
Lame goats.
Number 3 looks like the leash law,
Mm-hmm.
requiring animals to be fenced or leashed.
Can I ask a question on number 3 before we go on? Where does, like a log chain fall in? You see that a lot around with larger dogs. They'll chain them with a big heavy chain.
So the county currently has that ordinance in place that restricts that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure of the exact wording, how they distinguish between a regular rope and a large chain, but I have read that ordinance that it does prohibit.
Does that need to be in here
doing that.
with this one, or you just gonna rely on the county?
Yeah, I think we can just rely on the county.
Because this is meant to be in addition to the county ordinance. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yeah.
It looks like number 4 is an animal that's causing a disturbance, damaging property. And number 5 is environmental, like waste, litter, or odors. And then number 6 was the one that David was referring to, feeding wild animals or harboring wild animals.
Yeah, which threatens the public health, safety, or welfare.
Well, because we've done a lot of research on this, even feeding waterfowl is not good. It's not good for the animal. But we have a extremely hard time trying to get people to understand that feeding the ducks bread is harmful to the animal. I wish there was some way to kind of hold that a little bit in the responsibility of the person that's actually feeding them.
Mm.
Right here, the way it's written, it's more the owner or person doing it, the owner of the property. Could that be helped, or could that be used to help keep some of the feeding? Am I reading it right? So if the keeping, possession, harboring, or feeding, so if someone is feeding wild animals,
Yeah.
that's the person you're going to look at in this particular piece.
Yeah, I would say those are four separate actions. So if you're not keeping, possession, or harboring, but you're still feeding them, then you're still fall into that section.
Okay.
We coming onto campus getting students that are feeding ducks around the lake.
Believe it or not, it's not the campus kids, it's the community.
Oh, really?
The campus kids, the geese will chase them because they see humans and they think food.
Because they're used to
Chase
being
the
fed
kids
bread. Yeah,
because they think it's food,
that makes sense. Yeah.
or they spit at
I
you.
run that thing all the time.
Yeah.
Ran it last night and had one
And
get
there's a
after me.
there's a chicken over around Spring Street somewhere. We've
Okay.
seen him make an appearance every so often, but I think it's going across the road to the farm.
All right. All right.
I don't know why you go with the chicken crossing the road.
Okay, you beat me to it.
He's gonna go across there one day and not make it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll ask
So
him
then
questions.
your problem will be solved.
Yeah.
So do we see any changes that need to be made to this? Or can we go ahead and recommend that the staff move forward and present this, or whatever the next step would be?
I don't have any more questions.
Does town staff have any enforcement authority now under the current ordinance? Or is it totally under the county?
Yeah, it's totally under the county.
So basically, if this were adopted as written, there would be some enforcement ability by town staff through the fining method, but town staff would not confiscate animals. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we've put the third and fourth offense. We could require them to restrain the offending animal if animals are getting loose. But yeah, we wouldn't confiscate them. We don't have any way to transport them or anywhere to store them or anything like that.
Don't have anywhere to keep them.
Yeah.
However, you could contact animal control to
Mhm.
to just take the animals away if necessary.
We could. Yeah, we'll have to work out the details with animal control about if they can piggyback or if we go. I think we go out the first time or maybe the second time. We can identify whether that situation is going to have to be handed off to animal control. But this will at least give us a way to take some initial steps.
Yeah, I think in reality, most situations you probably would be able to predict if it's an animal control
Yeah.
issue or a town issue.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanna see y'all with the chicken in the car.
Yep.
I'd love to see Jessica with the chicken rolling up.
All right, so staff's looking from us, a motion to provide a recommendation to town council. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion, we recommend amending chapter 92 as presented by the staff to the town council.
A second.
Yep.
We have a motion and I'm not sure who the second
He
was.
beat me to it, but I was headed there.
David won. Motion and a second, so all in favor?
Or we could just vote electronically. So what will the next steps be in this process?
So this will go to town council on November the 8th. That meeting was pushed back because of early voting that'll be taking place here in town hall. But they'll review it November 8th and potentially adopt it, and then it'll go into effect.
All right, so what's next on our list? adjournment. We have a
Motion to
Motion for that.
adjourn.
motion for Thomas.
Second.
I'm gonna take this one.
We have to vote on that electronically.
So,
It didn't do it, Matt.
thanks, staff.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, you all could put signs up that say per town ordinance, you know, don't feed the, yeah.
I'll put that number on
Uh-huh.
on that sign.
Put that fee schedule on there.
Then I'm gonna call Jessica and go, got one down here feeding them.
I ran last night,
Yes, sir, yeah, absolutely.
One of them darn geese got after me.